Okay, associative and commutative properties. What property did we talk about yesterday? We talked about the distributive property. So we've covered the distributive property, and now we're going to talk about the associative and the commutative property. And we're going to add one other property in there. It's called the substitution property, but it's really easy. Okay? Okay, so you guys are going to have to do a little bit of writing for me today. Not a lot, just a little bit. Okay? First of all, you're going to write this down. This is what we covered yesterday. So put the date at the top of your notes. 9/23/20. And let's start by just reminding ourselves of the distributive property. This is what we did yesterday. I want to make sure we haven't forgotten it. The distributive property allows you to get rid of parentheses by sharing or distributing the term through the parentheses. I will give you a minute to write. Or two.
Right, what?
What's on the board? Write what's on the board. Because this is gonna.
Oh yeah, I remember it now.
Yeah, you won't need your Chromebook right now, so you can clear it. Okay, distributive property allows you to get rid of parentheses by sharing or distributing the term through the parentheses. Okay, so for example, do you need more time? Yes. I'll wait. I can be patient. It's hard. Okay, so an example of this would be 3 parentheses x plus 4. And if I want to use the distributive property, what would I get? Terry.
3x plus 12.
3x plus 12. So we distribute the 3 to get 3x plus 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, remember doing that yesterday?
I know. Mm-hmm.
It's coming back to us?
No.
The nice thing is I see you guys every day, so you're hopefully remembering this. Okay? Now remember, I'm going to post these notes on Canvas too, so if you miss something, because it's good for you to write it, it helps you remember it. Okay, the next one. Write this one down. The commutative property. The commutative property states the order in which you add or multiply does not change their sum or product. The order in which you add or multiply does not change their sum or product.
Is it good to like get rid of the cookie?
However you want to do it. Okay, so now this only works with addition and multiplication. And it basically is saying that we can change the order. Okay, so I want you to write these examples down. One example would be 3 plus 2 equals 2 plus 3. That's the commutative property. I can switch the order and still get the same answer. We all agree with that? 3 plus 2 is the same as 2 plus 3? Okay? Same thing. We learned that a long time ago. We just kind of forget that there's actually a property that goes along with that.
Yeah,
Okay,
didn't
it
we learn
also
that in,
works
like,
for
second
multiplication. 4 times 7 equals 7 times 4. Okay. We know that we can switch the order when we multiply. We get the same answer.
What about the missing?
It does not work with division or subtraction. So we cannot use the commutative property for division and subtraction.
Can you stop eating? Sorry.
Okay. We can also use this with more than 2 terms. So if I gave you this example, let's go with 4 plus 7 plus 2. How could you put the other side of that on? If I wanted to apply the commutative property, what would the other side look like? Here.
7 plus 4 plus 2.
Sure. 7 plus 4 plus 2. We're just switching up the order of the numbers. Okay. Questions there?
You can do it either way or their own like one way.
No, there's more than one way. So I could have said 7 plus 2 plus 4. Or 2 plus 4 plus 7. So there's lots of possible ways I could switch it up. Okay, but I'm just changing the order of the numbers. Okay, last definition you have to write down is the associative property. The associative property states that an easy way to find the sum or product of a set of numbers is to group or associate the numbers. I'll give you a second to write it, or a few seconds, and then I'll explain it.
I think our few seconds are up.
A few minutes.
Oh my god.
So this property also only works with adding or multiplying. And it says that we can change the grouping. So when you group or associate things. So an example might look like this. And I might group the 2 and the 3 together. Okay, so 2 plus 3 plus 4, but I'm going to group the 2 and the 3 together, so I have to add that first. Well, that would be the same as saying 2 plus 3 plus 4, but grouping the 3 and the 4 together and adding that first. Either way, we still get an answer of 9. So whether we add the 2 and the 3 first, or we add the 3 and the 4 first. Okay, so we're just changing our grouping. It also works with multiplying. So we could go 2 times 3 times 4 and group the 2 and the 3 together would be the same as 2 times 3 times 4, but grouping the 3 and the 4 together. Either way, the answer is 24.
Is it a V?
Sorry, it's an equal sign.
Yeah.
That was confusing. It's an equal sign. Okay, so at home, any questions so far? So what the heck is the point of these properties then? Okay, these properties do have a point and we use them quite often. Most of the time we use them without realizing we're using them. Okay, but we need to be aware of it. So the other property I said we would talk about is the substitution property. You do not have to write this. Substitution property just means you're substituting something in. If x equals y, if those two things are equal, then x plus 5 equals 7, also y plus 5 equals 7. Because if x is 2, what's y? 2, and they mean the same thing. Okay? So here's how we're going to use this. Okay, using the properties allows us to make mental calculations easier. Okay, look at this example. And you don't necessarily guess. This example, 8 times 2 times 3 times 5. If I said multiply that, just go ahead and multiply, what would you do?
I would go left.
Would you multiply everything in the order it's given? Some of you might, but if I said you don't get to use a calculator. I personally would not want to do 8 times 2, which is 16, and then have to multiply that by 3, because that's too much for me to do in my head. Okay, I would like to put this in a different order. So here's how I can make mental math a little easier. I'd like to change this. Instead of 8 times 2 times 3 times 5, I'd like to say 8 times 3 times 2 times 5. I want to switch these. Anybody know why I might want to switch the order of those numbers? Terry.
Rounded looks like 8 times 3 is 24, with 2 times 5 which is 10, but 24 times 10 is what you do.
Right. Okay. So I switched the order of the numbers because by using the commutative property. The commutative property says that's okay, you can do that. And then when Terry was explaining it, he still didn't do 8 times 3 times 2 times 5. He did this. So he actually grouped the numbers together using the associative property. Does everybody agree with that? And so that grouping made it easier because 2 times 5 is 10. And 8 times 3 is 24. And then when we multiply, that's really easy. 24 times 10 is just putting a 0 on the end, right? It's 240. Now the properties from here on out, when I replaced 2 times 5 with 10, that's the substitution property. When I replace 24 times 10 with 240, that's the substitution property. A lot of times, we do all this in our head. We do this commutative property and associative property stuff in our head. Today, we're just going to keep track of what we're doing. Okay? It's going to be easy on your home, trust me. I haven't made anything too hard yet, have I?
Yeah, not really.
Okay. A little more. Okay, let's look at this one. Would you add these numbers in the order they're given? If I said add them, would you add them in that order or would you switch the order up?
I would switch the order.
What order would be nicer?
17 plus 13 plus 6 plus 14.
Okay, so he switched the order, and the commutative property says that's okay to do. You can switch the order. Riley, why did you like that order better? Why is it easier?
I know why.
Kind of hard to explain. A 10, right? They all would end in 0 then. So really, he didn't only switch the order, he also is mentally grouping some of them together. 17 plus 13, he grouped together. 6 plus 14, he grouped together. That's the associative property that lets us do that. And then we have 30 plus 20 by just substituting, which is 50. Now again, we typically do most of this in our head. Okay? So on your homework tonight, I'm not gonna make you write all of this. You don't, I already did this for you on your homework.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just gonna make you identify the property that was used.
So is distributed property
So-
or unit?
Distributed property could be in there. So let's look at an example.
Oh,
Okay, you don't have to write these down because I'm gonna post this on Canvas and you'll be able to see it. Look at letter A. It started as 4 plus 18 plus 36, and I changed it to 4 plus 36 plus 18. What property did I use to change the order? No. Commutative. So you would have to tell me that's the property you used. And it's gonna be a drop-down box. Like you pick the property. Okay? Then I switched the order so that I could group the 4 and the 36 together, because then it ends in a really nice number. It ends in a 0. So when I group them together, what property did I use? Awesome.
Associative.
Associative. 4 plus 36 is 40. So I replaced that with 40. What property is that? Substitution.
Oh, so we did it the way.
And then 40 plus 18 is 58. What property is that? Substitution.
Oh my god.
Well, that's very easy. All you gotta do is pick those properties.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks
so
for
let's
making
try
that
letter
homework
B.
easy.
It started as 1/2 plus 4 plus 2.5. I changed it to 4 plus 1/2 plus 2.5. What property allows me to switch the order of the numbers? Because that's what I did, Logan. So I would choose commutative property. Then I noticed that I have a 1/2 and a 1/2, and that would go together really nice. So I put them together. What property allows me to put them together? Terry. Associative. Then I get 4 plus 3, which is which property? I replaced.
Substitution.
And finally I get 7 by the substitution property.
Okay.
Okay, so we didn't quite get through everything yet. So those continuing on, do you notice any similarities between these first two?
They're exactly the same.
They're exactly the same.
Will they all
Do you,
be?
so Brooklyn's question right away, will they always be the same? Yeah.
No.
Except for, maybe there will be one extra property. Okay? So we have to be a little bit careful, but it is gonna kind of look like this. But don't just write it down because you'll have to figure it out. Look at this one. 5 times 3 times 6 times 2 goes to 5 times 2 times 6 times 3. What property allows me to switch the order?
Commutative.
Commutative. So I put
See, why is there a box on there?
commutative.
Because it
Okay.
doesn't like it.
What property allows me to group the 5 and the 2 and the 6 and the 3?
Associative.
Associative property. Then 5 times 2 is 10 and 6 times 3 is 18. So what property allowed me to replace those?
Substitution property.
And then again, the substitution property. Okay, so far we've looked at this with just numbers. Okay? Now let's look at if it has some algebra with it. Okay? But you guys, really the same type of thing. Okay, so don't let this confuse you. So the first one, 4x plus 5y plus 6x. And then I changed it to 4x plus 6x plus 5y. What did I do there? Did I group things or did I change the order? I just changed the order. And what property is that? That's the commutative property. So I used the commutative property to start. Okay, then when we combine like terms, we literally are grouping the x's together. So I want to group the 4x and the 6x. So if I'm going to group those, what property? What property do I use for grouping?
Associative property.
Associative property.
Associative.
And then I replaced 4x plus 6x with 10x, so what property did I use?
Use substitution.
Substitution.
So what do you?
Okay, there's one property though that we've already learned about that I haven't used. What property did we learn about that I haven't used in any examples yet?
Distributive property.
The distributive property. Okay, pay attention really closely to this. Austin, pay attention.
I am paying attention.
Okay, if the distributive property is used, it's always used first. Okay, everybody heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to use the distributive property, it has to come first. So look at this example. It starts as 2 parentheses x plus 7 plus 3. Well, in the next step, the parentheses are gone. When we are trying to remove the parentheses, what property do we use? The distributive. I distributed the 2 to the x and the 2 to the 7 to get 2x plus 14. So I used the distributive property first. Then I have 2x plus 3x plus 14. What happened from step 2 to step 3? Did I group things or change the order?
Change the order.
Change the order. What property is changing the order? Commutative property.
I was whispering it just in case it wasn't right.
Okay, and then I group the 2x and the 3x together. What property is that? Associative. And finally, I have 5x plus 14, which is substitution. So if the distributive property is used, it's used first. Okay, one last example. Sorry, there shouldn't be a line on the first one. Ignore that line then. Okay, so it started as 4 parentheses 2 plus x plus 2x. The next step is 8 plus 4x plus 2x. What property was used? Austin?
Distributive and then associative.
I used the distributive property first. How come I didn't have to use the commutative property? Because Austin said distributive and then associative and then substitution.
I didn't say substitution.
Well, he didn't say that, but that would be the last one. Why could I skip the commutative property in this case?
I realized and I forgot.
Terry, it looks pretty simple from here. Just 4 times 2 is 8.
Right, so we started with the distributive property. 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times x is 4x, and then plus 2x. Did I need to switch the order of anything? No, it was already, the x's were already next to each other, so I didn't have to switch the order. So I got to skip the commutative property.
Oh.
And then I grouped the x's to be the associative property. And then I had 8 plus 6x, which was substitution. Okay? So on your homework, what you're going to be expected to do is you're going to go into modules and